Sí, porque te dijo que el el stream acabó.
Sí,
Tienes
me
que
lo
hacer
acabó.
uno nuevo.
O
Por
sea,
eso.
literalmente
Por
me
eso,
puso.
por eso.
Me
Tienes,
toca.
tienes que
Ya
hacer
le
uno
puse, ya le
nuevo.
puse. Pero pues digo, es que me va a tocar como parte uno y parte 2
Bueno,
en lo que quede guardado, pero pues bueno. Ya.
¿listo?
Sí,
¿Y hay gente o...?
0.
Bueno, no importa.
Ay, no sé qué. Ya, 1. Ya, quieres empezar.
Yeah, so for some reason, because we're not doing anything weird, honestly, we have OBS. If there's anyone here with like streaming experience, we are learning on the fly, so hopefully you guys can have a bit of patience with us. But I don't know, it just said that it had become unstable and it had to finish the streaming, which I don't really know why it's doing that, but so we're probably gonna have to upload 2 parts of this stream. But again, you know, what we're gonna use this week, you know, like I told you guys, you are like the ambassador program for our streaming. So we're gonna learn how to work out all the issues with you guys. And the cool thing about our channel is that we're all super family. So, you know, I'm sure that we all have a good amount of patience, I hope. But we'll definitely see if it comes up again. I'll tell Danny to let us know what YouTube is saying, because I don't really get it. I don't really get what the problem is, but we'll see. Anyways, that'll give me a good chance to get back to the painting. Wouldn't you guys have loved it if like stream had stopped and then we started again and there's the painting finished? It's like, yeah, draw an oval and then cow. No, but what I've been trying to do, I haven't gone back to the portrait, because I don't feel that that's super important for now. But what I've been trying to do is see how my surrounding values behave with these kind of more earthy colors that I had put up top. So that's very important. I still want this to be cooler. Let's not call it white. Let's not refer to it just plainly as white. But I want it to be lighter, not as light maybe as it was originally, as it is originally in the photograph. But I also don't want the attention to be so kind of drawn far from the portrait. I think the portrait is still a moment that I want to paint in this painting. So, and I want the kind of like the gesture, the attitude of that portrait to be important. So, so I need to strike like a nice balance between being able to paint these values and also being able to not draw attention from the portrait. So that's kind of what I'm almost like trying to find my way a little bit blindly through the painting of the painting. So yeah. ¿Y alguien dice que pudo haber sido o que puede ser? No?
No, pero
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, like this is our first experience with streaming. I don't even think we have to do OBS. We can actually just try to have the camera be like a webcam, and do it directly through YouTube, and maybe that's a little bit better, because I know OBS is important for people that are streaming like games and stuff like that. But we don't really need any of that, and that's probably gonna help even with our internet speed and with the uploading, because you know there's going to be one less thing that's running. That's what I'm thinking, just rationally thinking. But again, I don't know. I always heard that people used OBS, so that's what I wanted to try, and it gave us a chance to have like a picture-in-picture. So maybe, I don't even know if you could do that in YouTube. Again, baby steps. This is baby steps for us, but we think it's a nice sacrifice, you know, to do. For the sake of just painting, real time and with you guys and trying to answer questions while the garbage truck is outside. That sort of stuff is priceless. That's like real painting. So.
Una pregunta dice, do you try to get maximum likeness? I find this very distracting when I'm trying to paint a portrait, and I maybe always fail to, entre comillas, satisfy the person I'm painting.
Right, but the cool thing is that I already know Danny, and she is always like 1,000 times more beautiful than whatever I'm able to paint her. So this is always going to be a losing effort for me to try to get likeness in a painting. And because these paintings are for me, I don't have to answer to a patron that wants me to paint them or to a commission or anything like that. That's why even though I've done that in the past, I don't like to do those anymore. I don't think I'm actually very good at doing those anymore, unfortunately, because I kind of taught myself how to answer strictly to myself. So, maybe people that really know me and they know what to expect of me, they're like, oh, dude, do your own thing. When people tell me that, when people say, do your own thing, just paint whatever painting you want to paint, I sense complete liberty, and that usually happens when we're painting, when I'm painting other artists or when we're painting, amongst ourselves. Then I'm like, hell yeah, this is awesome. Like, I love painting portraits. But, aside from that, I just don't really ever think of likeness. I think that for me, it's something that almost like weighs me down, and it blocks my ability to understand my painting as a whole, because if I end up judging my painting solely on the fact that it's going to faithfully reproduce a likeness, then I'm always going to come up short, I feel, because I don't have great drawing. That's the honest truth. And likeness, I think, has to do with drawing. And if I'm going to judge myself based, again, solely on that, then I'm never going to really discover like a ton of different values that I can have as a painter. I'm just going to understand myself as somebody that has bad drawing. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to, almost like grant that power to likeness. I don't. I mean, there's no need for it in my own work. I can totally get it if you are a portrait painter and you're being paid to interpret the best version of the person that you are, supposed to paint. That's a lot of pressure for me. That honestly, I don't want that life. I know that people get paid like very good money for, especially very successful, portrait painters get paid, good money for being able to, again, interpret that great version of the sitter. I'm willing to sacrifice that. I'm willing to get, little money, small money compared to those big bucks. But I want the liberty to do whatever I want, to see the people as I want them to, as I want to see them, and not be subjected to a gaze that I don't understand. And I think that's the hardest part. I mean, successful portrait painters would say, well, interpreting what people want is actually a gift. It's actually that's pretty amazing. That's a talent in and of itself. But so yeah. So there's enormous amount of hard work and talent that goes into making a portrait where you as a painter is satisfied, and the sitter, whomever they may be, are also satisfied. That's amazing. But more often than not, a painter is just subjected to whatever the sitter says, and we have to work incessantly until the sitter is satisfied, and I don't like that. And again, you're going to be paid a ton of money if you do that well, but I don't need that aggravation. I really don't. I'd much rather just paint whatever I want to paint and not feel like it's something that can that can hinder my painting, that can create obstacles which won't let me understand my painting as something that's valuable to me.
Ay, Camilo escribió, Camilo Calderón.
¡Grande Camilo!
Dijo, felicitaciones por el primer año de este increíble proyecto.
Ay, muy lindo. Muchas gracias, Camilo. Si están en Bogotá, Camilo es de los profesores. Nosotros compartimos muchísimos años enseñando en la Javeriana. Y Camilo y Taller 301, plug. Camilo es de los artistas más bondadosos, más honestos que conozco y que tiene una capacidad súper bonita y es un profesor muy muy chévere. Tiene una vibra muy muy linda el taller que él maneja. Entonces si están en Bogotá y si quieren pintar en un sitio muy muy lindo y bajo la dirección de una persona que a mi juicio es un ser humano muy chévere, vayan a Taller 301. Y tiene una voz, yo siempre digo, si Dios hablara, hablaría como Camilo. O sea, Camilo es la voz de Dios hecha hombre, es la voz de Dios hecha ser humano. Con eso les digo, si eso no les sirvió para ir y por lo menos oírlo hablar, así sea una tarde, Camilo debería tener un OnlyFans donde solo habla.
Vincent Delanoy manda una pregunta. Dice, do you pay attention at what you paint? Then, I understand that you actually just want to learn why you paint it and how you paint it. More of a reflection on yourself?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all,
Sí, hi,
hey Vince, yeah, Danny's also saying hi. Vince is somebody who's very, very generous to all of our efforts and our projects, so thank you, Vince, real-time thank you. Yeah, I'm always, even though I'm speaking, I don't want to say it's like a talent because it actually takes a lot of effort on my part to try and concentrate, but while I'm talking, I'm also trying to gauge what I'm doing, inside the painting, and I'm trying to see if the decisions that I have made have actually taken the painting down the road that I sort of envisioned at the beginning, and if they didn't, then what actually happened, and during the execution of the painting that are actually making it stray somewhere else. But that I never stop. I never ever stop. Just reflecting upon those things. Just my mind goes a million miles an hour, and it's always just looking at the painting, and saying, what's my next decision, and how is that decision going to bring me closer to what I wanted to originally paint, or is actually going to take me somewhere completely different where I have to kind of reorganize and recalibrate and rethink what I'm doing. Many times I think a choice that I make is going to have an effect, like a very measurable effect on my painting, and many times it doesn't. I'm like, okay, fireworks are going to happen with this brushstroke, and I put it down and it's like flop. I just failed miserably at it, and I'm like, oh my god, nothing happened, like nothing. I didn't alter anything, or I didn't, nothing was affected, in a good or bad way. It's so terrible when just you see no levels of anything being affected by your choice. That's almost like the worst kind of moment in a painting, where you realize I'm doing something and nothing is happening, and I thought something was going to happen, and I thought that it was going to be measurable and it was going to be visible. And no, painting, sometimes it's very ungrateful, and sometimes you think you're going to do something and it doesn't show up, and you then have to say, wow, why is this not doing what I thought it would be doing? Why am I so off base that I thought I knew the variables that I was working with, and I thought I was controlling them, and I thought I was going to paint this kind of small exclamation point right at this moment, and I either ruined the painting or nothing, or worse, nothing happened. Sometimes it's even better to ruin it, like ruining a painting and then seeing the effect your bad choice had on it than to just paint, and sometimes paint for hours, on end, and then not seeing anything.
How often do you use a ground, and what determines whether you use one?
I'm going to interpret that the ground as both priming your surface and actually putting like an imprimatura on it. If it's about priming a surface, I mean, for 20 years, and I'm saying 20 years, but it has been 20 years. I think I oversay 20 years, but it has been 20 years. But for the best part of 20 years, oh dude, I either primed every single surface myself with like rabbit skin glue and just traditional acrylic gesso, just a ton of layers, sanding between layers, or I bought, when I was doing better, I bought pre-primed linen, and it was fantastic. It was amazing. Some of the best surfaces I've ever painted on. Very expensive, and that's one of the reasons that I don't really use it. Very hard to get here in Bogota. You can get it, but it's absurdly expensive. That's why many of us painters that live here, we paint on canvas. We paint on just regular, cotton duck canvas. But again, if I primed it, and I even went so far as to prime a couple of paintings many years ago, I'm going to say, I did it lead primed, like very traditional, lead priming. I waited, I think, 8 months for those linens. There were pieces of raw linen, those linens to dry, and it was pretty amazing, I have to say. It was very, very different experience from the one that I had previously had painting on acrylic on acrylic primer. Again, it was incredible. It was almost like having this connection with art history, because you feel that the surface is actually prone to receiving paint in a way that you can see, like in your favorite paintings. So I remember I tried to do a very, very fine painting on top of an oil primed surface that I had let dry for months. And when I started doing like my initial underpainting and then rendering all the form, I was like, oh my god, this feels like David. In no way I could paint like Jacques-Louis David, but the surface felt like a lot of his paintings, and I was like, this is incredible. Finally now I understand that is something that I couldn't have just said, oh no, I could do this with cotton canvas. No, you would have to replicate like all these different variables, and they will get you closer. But nowadays, I'm not interested in that. I really am not. I think I did it for a long time, and I would never ever tell people not to do it. I think that if that's something that you want to do, then do it, because that actually brings you closer to understanding paint, to understanding our materials as our tools, and to building a strong bond and a strong relationship with our tools. So I love the technical part of painting. I absolutely adore that side of painting, but I don't care for that much anymore. And I hope people can respect that and can understand my reasons for it. I did that a long time. I did that for a long time, and now I want to understand painting a little bit differently. And I think part of it is just not being bound by decisions that are extremely formal, that have to do with a tradition of painting that I adore, but I don't feel that I'm obligated to perpetuate. I don't really feel that painting is something that is done well in one manner, and then if you like that manner of painting, then your job, it's almost like this thing that you never signed up for, but your job is to just say, I have to keep this tradition alive. No, I actually don't want to do that. I actually want to see what painting kind of means to me, how I understand painting. So, yeah.
Your work and Kent Williams is very different. I find you both beautifully marry abstraction and representation. Can you please talk a bit about what you think of him as a painter?
Of Kent as a painter, he was one of my childhood heroes. If we were talking about illustration, and not childhood. I mean, he's not. I'm 40. ¿Cuántos años tengo? I'm 43. I forgot how old I was. Sorry. I'm 43, and I think Kent is maybe buscame ahí, wiki. Maybe 50 something, like 58, maybe 59. I don't know. I'm not sure. 58. Oh, there we go. So I hit it. So we are from different generations enough that when I was a teenager, I saw a bunch of his comic books, and I was like, oh my god, this is like this is more grounded. This is earthier than than those very superhero-y traditional comic books that I grew up with, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And ever since then I've noticed how Kent has evolved his manner of working, because to me he's also very much so echoing like Dave McKean drawing and Egon Schiele. Like that is Kent Williams to me. I mean, it's very reductive to say oh yeah, this artist is this meets this, and I usually don't like to describe people's work like that. But I think that's also a very kind of normal human way of referencing somebody that perhaps we don't know with things that we do know. So yeah, so he's very Ashley. He's very Ashley Wood. He's very Dave McKean. Very Egon Schiele for sure. But he also has this, and he carries like an erotic side. So he carries also that kind of air of eroticism in his work that that is also very obviously very present in Chile, and in his own work I love those abstract moments. I actually love his drawing. I think his drawing is just amazing, and his drawing also very much so speaks about the qualities that you're describing with the painting. Just I do this thing sometimes, and maybe you can do it too, and it's actually like a super cool kind of game. But try to cover up everything that you recognize as figurative in his drawings. So if there's a hand, just cover it up, or if there's a portrait, just cover that up also. And just look at the rest of the gestures of the other gestures of the drawing. And they are so insanely abstract and loose and many times just completely sort of disconnected that's amazing. That's an amazing quality. So yeah, so that balancing act where you are trying to insert a very I'm not going to say naturalist. He's probably not super naturalist in that sense, but a form, a very a form, and in his case and in many of my paintings, a human form that still obeys natural laws, and trying to insert that into a space that is usually more prone to being understood as an expressive or abstract expressionist stage is very difficult. It's actually very difficult trying to marry that and to make it organic in a way, to make these two seemingly opposed kind of natures be able to live in this one space. It's very tough, very hard. So yeah, he's definitely somebody I looked up to when I was younger, and I still do. There was one time where he wrote to me, inviting me to a show that he was having. He was doing this collective. He was kind of putting together this collective. I guess he was curating that show, and he wrote me, and he wrote to me, and he said, "Oh, I'd love for you to be in this show." And I had never met him. I think we had exchanged comments on social media, but I had never met him, and that to me like almost blew my mind. Him and Phil Hale and Mike Mignola, being able to have conversations with them, right now as an adult, when all of them shaped me as a young, artist, that to me has blown my mind. Just to be able to say, oh my God, I have a conversation with Mike Mignola on my Facebook account, and I when I die, I want to be buried. I want to be buried with that conversation, just so that God believes that I had the conversation with Mignola. So that was dumb. Anyways.
What do you think about using black paint in paintings? I've heard teachers say not to, and others saying to use it.
Yeah. Usually when an artist says, any artist, let's not call them teachers, let's not call them, let's not give them or grant them that the responsibility that's inherent to teaching. But usually, when somebody starts a conversation in art with you shouldn't do X, Y, or Z, then it speaks more about their shortcomings and their not being able to conceive art, that is executed with those variables, whatever they may be. You're speaking about a tiny one that has to do with one particular pigment. But whenever people say, no, that's not what you were supposed to do, or no, this shouldn't be solved in this way, or no, it speaks more about their close-mindedness and not so much about them being able to understand something or hold the truth about something. So I wouldn't pay attention to them. I much rather, in this case, in the case that you're speaking about, regarding black as a very essential color, or as essential as any other color that you would put in your palette, then obviously my answer is of course it's super important. It's as important as anything, but I don't want the conversation to just be about black, because it's usually speaks. That conversation is usually very ignorant. The people that don't understand how to use black are the ones that say that you shouldn't be using black, because they think that all black does in a palette is actually make colors darker, and that's kind of a dumb, very simplistic way of understanding the role of a pigment in a palette, just based on its value, on its inherent value. I'm speaking about how, in this case, dark it is, how, dark black is. So if people are saying that, yeah, don't pay attention, because they don't know what they're saying. If you took black out of, painting history, you would just, you would see painting history crumble. That's how much black was used in palettes, throughout history. So if somebody says you shouldn't use black, that's just denying all the wonderful things that painting history did for, hundreds of years. So yeah, it's dumb. That's very, very dumb. But I would extend the conversation to saying that be very, very careful, very careful. I don't want to fall into the same trap as saying don't ever pay attention to anyone. No, just be very, very mindful, very, very careful when somebody is saying you're not supposed to do X, Y, or Z, because that's just a very strange way, in my mind, of understanding art. Because for every single time somebody says don't do whatever, there's always going to be a painter in this world, an amazing painter in this world, and she's going to be able to say, yeah, that thing that you said that I'm not supposed to do, well, I did it and the result was amazing. So there's examples for everything. It would be a cool game. One day we could do this, where you guys tell me, hey, I heard that you're not supposed to do, whatever. And my role is going to be to try to find an example to show you that it can be done, that the opposite can be done, so that if somebody's telling you not to, that you should be able to find a great example of yes, you can, and yes, it works. You just have to be open-minded and very kind of intelligent about, doing whatever the other person is professing should not be done. But yeah.
And I feel like I can settle on a style of painting. I get pulled by all manner of painters, from realist to very abstract and all the things in between. Any tips? Perhaps not looking at other art?
No, you can. Well, you can look at other art. I mean, you can celebrate other art. That's a word that I usually use, and I think it puts you in the right mindset. You can just celebrate what other people do. Many times I look at stuff, people that I respect do, and I always tell myself, oh my God, I always fall into that trap of saying, oh my God, I can't, I can't do that. I don't know how to do what they are doing. But then immediately I tell myself, well, that's their job. That's why they are doing it and you are not doing it, because they are capable of doing it and you're not. And you should celebrate the things that you can't do, and thank nature that there are people in this world, wonderfully talented people in this world, that are capable of doing those things, and they provide balance, and they provide you with like a more integral view of what art should be. But I think that searching, while it is a very personal thing, I think it depends on many things. I don't like the word style. I really don't, because style has, it has a very bad rap, particularly, for people that are illustrators or they work in the production part of, again, animations, video games, and many times they have to answer to a particular style that has been chosen by, an art director, a particular look that was settled, beforehand. And that is super, super important. Doing that, knowing how to recognize somebody's philosophy while they're working and why that's going to be the look of the movie or the video game, that's super, super important, right? But in art, many times, and in art, I try to use it as a shorthand to say, when you're just solely responding to yourself, when you're not tied to the vision of, somebody else's creative process, then it's far more complicated than just saying, oh yeah, I have to favor my line drawing, or I have to put my shadows in first, and then I have to do this, and that way I can gain like a super cool, my painting is going to look super cool, or I have to paint on top of this colored ground, and it'll give it this effect, and I really like that effect. But, those things are super easy to copy. They're very, very easy to emulate. Those, eventually you kind of understand as just very, very simple ways and very superficial ways to understand a painting. But what, the real definition of style actually does, it marries intent with the relationship that you have with your tools. So you are able to recognize what you want to say, and you're also able to execute it, in a way that shows the bond and the relationship, the hopefully deep-rooted relationship that you have with your tools. That's what style really means, that you're able to say, I'm going to emphasize these different aspects of, picture making, and I know how to emphasize them with the tools that I have in hand, and I know how to, I know what things to push. I know what things to, to put in a higher hierarchy. Those things have to do with style. When you look at style as a very abstract thing, that's actually what style really, really means. It doesn't mean, the look of the painting, because sometimes we stop at the very kind of obvious and very basic way of examining a painting. And that one, as I said, that's the one that's super easy to copy. And, like I said, that's the one that many, many illustrators and many animators and many people that are in concept work, that do concept design, they have to emulate styles many times, because, somebody that's higher than our position has established that, this is going to be the look for the movie, or the look for the game, or the look for the, whatever you're doing, and you have to say, okay, I get it. I get what you're trying to push. I get how you're trying to, the visual ways in which you have decided to push those things that you have decided to push, and I have to replicate those things. And those are easy for artists. Again, those are super easy to emulate. But to find what you describe as your own style, yeah, that has to do with time, and that has to do with the relationship that you have with your tools, and that has to do with you saying, I know now how to emphasize what I want to say, and I can emphasize it with my tools, you know, with the way I understand, you know, my relationship, you know, the way I understand my relationship with my tools is defined. So those are tough. Those are way tougher than just copying somebody else's way of working. So.
Una en español.
Una en español.
Camilo Andrés Buitrago.
¿Qué hubo, Camilo Andrés?
Hola Nicolás, ¿alguna vez intentó la pintura en medios digitales?
Sí, intenté. Hice fondos para una animación, un corto animado. Y fue chévere, o sea, era súper ineficiente al comienzo. O sea, al comienzo me demoré, yo me acuerdo, al comienzo me demoré como 3 días haciendo un fondo y me quedó súper bonito. Y me dijeron, oiga, súper chévere, pero necesitamos que se demore 1 día por fondo. Y yo, ¿what? ¿Qué? Y yo, 1 día por fondo, o sea, y al final le cuento como yo estaba trabajando en Photoshop pintando, estaba haciendo todo en una capa, todo. O sea, yo ponía una capa de fondo que era como una textura de lienzo, porque la idea era reproducir como algo que tuviera como un carácter súper tradicional en óleo. Y yo ponía esa capa y después, o sea, 2 pinceles X y nada, una sola capa. Entonces era tenaz porque me decían, por ejemplo, oiga, ¿será que puede saturar más el cielo? Y yo decía, juepucha, voy a tener que volver a pintar entonces estas relaciones de todo este pueblito contra el cielo, porque entonces si a mí me dicen que cambia el cielo, pues para mí, yo súper así pintor, como todo hiper tradicional, yo decía, no, pues todas mis otras relaciones se van a afectar. Y eran como, no, ¿cómo así? El cielo no está en una capa, no, pero usted tiene que ser como más cuidadoso con eso, porque entonces los cambios tienen que ser mucho más eficientes. Y cambios siempre va a haber. O sea, al principio yo me ofendía resto por cambios, y después pues uno aprende que no, uno es una parte súper chiquita de ese equipo de animación, y yo aprendí ahí resto. Había gente súper talentosa. Igual me daban los layouts, o sea, en algunas sí tuve que hacer layouts yo, pero me daban los layouts y yo tenía que pintar también. Y ya había, esto también es chévere, ya había color keys, ya había un color script hecho por Carlos Felipe León, que es como una de las personas más talentosas en Colombia, o sea, que ha trabajado en animación. Entonces Carlos Felipe había hecho ese color script y yo solo tenía que seguirlo como un torombolo, o sea, con todo y eso hay veces la embarraba, pero sí, una experiencia súper bonita. Entonces, más allá de trabajar pintura digital, también fue súper chévere ser parte, yo que soy todo, o sea, honestamente yo nunca he hecho parte como de un colectivo, más allá de que cuando trabajé, pues sí éramos parte de un estudio donde trabajábamos hartos artistas y nos teníamos como que apoyar ahí todos mutuamente, pero nunca era como en pro de un proyecto grande. Entonces este proyecto que ahora tenemos con Dani y ese momento haciendo esa animación, creo que han sido los 2 únicos momentos en mi vida donde he sentido que es trabajar como con alguien y en equipo. Entonces que no me viene naturalmente, la verdad, no me cuesta mucho. Yo soy de las personas que no es que no quiera trabajar en equipo, sino que es que no, o sea, yo siempre pienso, oiga, pero si me cuesta a mí entenderme, o sea, ahora me está pidiendo que yo tenga que entender también como su intención y y la dirección que usted le quiere dar, eso es muy gallo, muy difícil, muy difícil. Entonces, sí, para mí esa fue la parte bonita de trabajar de digital, pero no, aparte de eso y haciendo cosas muy triviales, como pintando yo pues para mí mismo en Photoshop así súper, o sea, cero expectativa, No he hecho más, pero me encantaría. Yo muchas veces digo que si hubiera, de nuevo, si hubiera nacido en otra vida, en otro universo, yo creo que, y digamos que yo fuera joven ahorita y entendiera la herramienta, o sea, entendiera Procreate o Photoshop como mi herramienta de pintura, nunca hubiera cogido un pincel. Bueno, no sé si nunca, pero, entendería que esas son herramientas de pintar. Yo incluso soy de los que pienso que el futuro de la pintura no responde, y estoy hablando a grandísima escala, y pasando ya mucho tiempo, pero el futuro de la pintura no es a punta de pinceles y tela y como toda esa tradición que tenemos, sino que va a ser súper, súper distinto. Sería una tontería que no fuera distinto, honestamente.
Do you ever scrape off the paint with a palette knife and repaint an area?
Yeah, that's if you've seen many of the videos, that's what I end up having to do many times. I think the one from Monday last week, see Dani?
Sí.
Yeah, Monday's painting last week is a perfect example of me scraping and repainting, scraping and repainting, scraping and repainting. So, oh yeah, I'm not above that. If I feel very frustrated, which I do many times, I'm not above any of that. I scrape and repaint constantly. So, and if I feel that the decisions that I'm taking are not leading me anywhere, but they're just kind of repeating the same mistake over and over again, then yeah, I have to take myself out, of that kind of vicious cycle by saying I'm gonna scrape. But again, many times I can scrape a ton of times and and I don't have good results, That doesn't guarantee a good result, so I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Bueno. I think I'm liking the very kind of looser quality that I'm getting with the paint. I'm very hesitant to just go into those eyes and just paint them. I always much rather give more structure to a nose, and Danny has an awesome nose. But I'm much rather go to that place that has a lot of structure and just ground that place than to just say, oh, I'm gonna paint an eye, I'm gonna model an eye just because we're supposed to for some reason. No, I feel that this painting has like a really nice kind of looser attitude, and this I wanted to break up a little bit. This is very, it's not, so have know that I am completely aware of where I am in terms of painting. But this is very Dickinson-y in a sense. It's very broken and very abstract. But I kind of like that there is looseness here. So if there's looseness here and then I went up here and tightened everything up, then these two wouldn't really marry that well. That has to be something that has to be like a nice balance that has to be achieved. So I'm a little hesitant to say, oh, I'm gonna keep working in my, portrait in my face, not on my face. Yeah, just painting my face like an idiot. I'm not gonna be kind of trying to paint a lot of this face, because I think the more I work on it, the more it's going to divorce itself from the rest of the painting, and I don't want that. I know that that's something that I'm not really looking for, so I'm hoping that this reads as a single painting, like that there is a relationship between all the elements within the painting. So.
Una en español.
Claro.
De Eros Castaño dice.
¿Qué hubo Eros? Eros siempre está presente.
Sí.
Sí.
Siempre comenta. ¿Tendremos alguna semana pintando con óleos preparados manualmente? Saludos, Nicolás.
Eros.
Con éxito en live.
No, gracias, Eros. Pero no me ponga a preparar pintura. Le voy a decir, bueno, yo he tenido más experiencias preparando pintura, pero le voy a decir la primera experiencia que tuvimos cuando estudié, y es que nuestro profe nos dijo, bueno, les voy a enseñar a preparar óleos. y llevó un pedazo de mármol, y llevó ¿cómo se llama el de vidrio? Un mortero de vidrio todo grandote, divino, y llevó pigmento. Él nos lo llevó, no tuvimos que pagar nada, él tenía pigmento, entonces nos puso a preparar color. Y preparar color, uno quisiera que fuera una cosa que uno puede preparar como con una cuchara y hacerla como en la mesa de la cocina, y uno ir como mezclando pigmento ahí súper tranquilo, re normal. Y no, preparar pigmento es súper difícil, y entender cómo, digamos, que cada color tiene que tener una relación súper específica en cuanto a cuánto aceite se le está mezclando. Es de nuevo una cosa súper, súper compleja. Y duramos 6 horas, que eran nuestras clases de pintura. Duramos 6 horas preparando color, y estábamos muertos, o sea, eso que a uno no le da el brazo de todo lo que estaba moliendo uno color ahí como un idiota. Y al final, como que nuestro profe nos dice, ¿y no se les hace maravilloso que hoy en día existe una tienda súper chévere que uno va y puede conseguir todo lo que ustedes acabaron de hacer en estos tubitos, y es muchísimo mejor del color que hicieron ahorita? Entonces uno dice, no, pues sí, lo que pasa es que es más, yo creo que uno puede llegar a producir un color súper bueno, y lo que uno puede ganar es que no va a ser tan costoso como el color que pues ya le está vendiendo a uno la casa que lo produce. Pero que uno pueda producir mejor color, no, ya hay las personas, o sea, si uno mira los colores de Rublev, son colores preciosos, o sea, todo está hecho a mano, eso es increíble, o sea, tienen procesos más industriales, pero digamos que son colores que se producen a mano, y son increíbles, o sea, son absolutamente increíbles. Entonces uno ahí es donde dice, pues, si lo puedo comprar, pues lo compro, y si no, lo que pasa es que igual va a tener que comprar el pigmento, y el pigmento es costoso, o sea, comprar rojo cadmio es súper costoso. Entonces también tiene uno que ser consciente como de esas limitaciones. Entonces yo lo hice y lo he hecho, lo volví a hacer después de haber hecho esa clase que nos dejó a todos traumatizados. Lo hice en la universidad, aunque en la universidad, en la Javeriana, lo hacía como parte de la clase, lo hacía el profe que daba pintura 2, que era Gabriel Silva, sigue siendo Gabriel Silva. Pero, uy, no, yo ya, no, me cansé, o sea, llegué a ese punto donde digo, yo sé que uno puede llegar a que esto sea menos costoso, y que uno pueda producir un volumen de color que pues costaría muchísimo si uno lo empieza a comparar con el color que se podría uno comprar comercialmente, pero a uno es muy probable que no le quede tan bien hecho, y que igual haya sido costoso si uno está como pensando en un pigmento como súper bonito. Entonces, no sé, cuando pienso costo-beneficio y la cantidad del esfuerzo, es duro, pero sé que, por ejemplo, mucha gente hoy, como hay tantas restricciones, hay mucha gente que pinta y entuba el blanco de plomo, por ejemplo. Como hay tantas restricciones acerca del blanco de plomo, hay mucha gente que lo compra el pigmento y hace el plomo, produce el plomo personalmente. Entonces,
Ahí te saludo Vicky. Ahí entró.
Vicky, que está, creo que en Montreal ahora. Grande Vicky, grande.
Dice una pregunta en inglés. At what point do you stray away from the reference photo? Does this change?
Minute 1, I think. Does this change
in every piece, or is there a conscious decision at a certain stage of the process?
No, I think I'm always going to stray away from the photo. If it's a matter of saying, when is it not the intent to just, paint that picture, I would tell you minute one, it's never going to be the sole intent to paint the picture. My intent is always to paint a painting. That is always going to be what I want to do. And to paint a painting is far more complex than just saying how far or how close am I getting to my reference photo. And I think that I have that, I'm thinking about that since the first minute. Like, I'm willing to stray farther and farther away once I've been able to recognize where my painting is headed. If I'm able to see, okay, this painting is headed, towards a place that I feel much more comfortable, painting, and if I see that somewhat easily, then I'm totally fine. At minute one, I'm perfectly aware of, how much I'm separating myself from my reference, and I'm totally fine with that separation. I always, if you've heard me speak, I think that in a lot of videos I talk about understanding nature as a starting point. And even though there's, this is obviously a photograph, this is an object that is reinterpreting nature, there's echoes of things that I've painted from life, and there's experiences that I've had from life when painting from life that I probably try to bring to a painting like this. So I always view my starting point as nature. That is where I start. That is where I find all these variables that I really respect. But that's also where it ends, and it's going to be my choice if I want to be faithful to those variables, or if I'm just going to take a painting somewhere else. I don't know why I painted that mouth like that. Now I'm like, oh, it was so much better just hinting at that mouth, and now I'm hating it. No, porque el teclado está en inglés. Te toca ir al lenguaje, te tocaría ir al lenguaje y poner español.
O escribir
No. I sometimes use these lining brushes, and I just want to make like this subtle mark to give back gesture to the to that mouth. Kind of like a gesture I think I sort of lost. ¿Y no te ha molestado el...?
En un momento bajó la señal, pero ya.
¿Sí? No sé qué será. No sé.
No, pero lo otro fue que la aplicación OBS se cerró.
¿Sí?
Sí, mira, llegó una notificación.
Ah, quién sabe. No, ni idea. Hasta ya no sé.
No, y busqué no. No hay más preguntas por
ahora. No.
Ahí te cuento que ahí subieron ya AJ y Hailey South, dos fotos del proceso pintando.
¿Qué? ¿En serio?
Sí.
Uy, re chévere.
Sí.
Sí, yo no espero nunca que las personas estén pintando al tiempo. O sea, no tiene que pasar para que uno sienta que es un proceso como así, que uno está... O sea, que se está socializando el proceso así de una, y que es súper chévere. Obviamente es súper chévere, pero no, pues si la gente quiere pintar se me hace increíble. By the way, I don't use solvent. I mean, a lot of people that already know me, they know that I don't. So what I do is I go through quite a bit of rags when I'm painting, because I try to take the excess off the brush, instead of just wiping my brushes and dipping them on in solvent. I think that's yeah. I'm kind of allergic to solvent, I feel, and not allergic, my skin, but just breathing solvent so much throughout the years, just really I don't smell that much anymore. This is pre-COVID too, so but yeah, I don't really smell that much anymore. Not to say that I'm immune to all bad smells, no, but particularly of solvents, I don't smell them that much anymore. Like if I'm teaching a workshop and people are using solvents, I won't smell them, and people outside the workshop would come in and say, "Whoa, it's like stinking in here, like this is terrible, like open a window." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm beyond this, like I am gone." I really am gone. I mean, I'm not proud of any of this, it's just that a lot of years of painting maybe in small spaces and just painting with traditional mediums, I think did that to me. So it's a shame, but I decided that I was going to stop. And while liquid is not like this miraculous thing, it does have solvent in it. It does smell. It smells far less, like let's say, than just traditional turpentine, obviously. But I use it sparingly, so it's not like I'm super affected by it. But if I don't use it, I'm totally fine. Maybe in a video during this week we can just use pure paint, no solvent at all, and you guys will see that the results are pretty much the same. It's just that we need to use more paint. That's all it is. And the fact that when we start, we have to be conscious of not being able to sort of have that very nice kind of washy layer. But if you see, like the wash is only available here and here, maybe some areas here, but that's about it. Everything else has been covered with paint. I mean, there's areas where that wash kind of breathes through the paint layer, and that's very nice also. But I don't really feel like I need it. I feel like if it came down to not being able to use it, like I'd be completely fine not using it. So I think I'm gonna do a little bit in some places, and then I'm gonna let the painting be, and I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call the time to death, and that's it, because I like some of the open qualities that I have right now. I think that's what this year has taught me, as a painter. It's just that these awesome things can happen when things are not spelled out, but when things are just presented in a way that are very open, and it's kind of beautiful. It goes against that instinct and that responsibility that I always felt throughout the years to just finish something for the sake of finishing it. And I'm using the word finish because it's how I equated finishing. Like I equated finishing with just resolving through probably modeling and rendering a lot of the elements that were throughout the painting. And nowadays I just, and again, this is probably semantics, but it kind of helps me. I define finishing as just solving, like a state where the painting is resolved, and that can mean so many different things that I enjoy having. I enjoy that liberty of saying, okay, this doesn't require me to just render this to a up until it's in a state where where I'm speaking about the smaller shapes, the smaller and smaller shapes that make up this bigger shape. But, you know, finishing something that has now become like an open-ended sort of definition that can actually vary from painting to painting. So I'm very excited to have let myself kind of explore that, you know, throughout this year. So.
Alguien dijo, check out Keita Morimoto, an amazing figurative painter.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't use solvent at all.
Yeah, Keita, I actually gave a workshop at Keita's. He invited me to give a workshop many years ago now, but he's incredible. Yeah, I went to Toronto and I met him. He's an amazing guy, super generous, insanely talented, works just as hard as anyone that I've ever known. But yeah, they don't usually. When I was there, they wouldn't use medium because they were almost like in a basement, so the air had kind of like nowhere to go, and I'm not sure if he has changed where his studio is at. Maybe not. I've seen photos and I think they still remind me of when I went there and visit. But yeah, he's insanely talented. I don't know about, he may not use solvent, but I'm pretty sure he uses a medium. So, and the thing is, mediums usually have solvents in it. So we're not, when we say, zero medium, zero solvent, we would have to also not use any medium. Although nowadays there's alkyd oil-based, alkyd solvent-free mediums. So it's all kind of oil-based, and it just takes a little bit longer to dry, and that's about it. So it would be all oils. I think I'm liking the painting. I think I'm gonna do a kind of highlight on the forehead. Hopefully I won't ruin it. And I think I'm gonna call it. I think we're good. I'm gonna leave it here. I really like the openness. I like that this all just feels, this definitely feels earthy. And the earthy quality also kind of lends itself really nicely to just accept that the painting can be left at this stage. It does feel like a chunky, kind of like that's the way the painting wanted to be. I like the decision. So this is me kind of working through the decisions I've made, throughout the painting. I like the decision of having lowered this value because I really feel that this value would start to compete with that bridge of the nose that we spoke at the beginning. And, this is kind of like cheating, but it's not because there's no cheating in art. I left the paper. I left the light of the paper coming through that highlight, and I really like it. I saved it for that peak of light. And that also meant that if I wanted to push that, I wasn't going to push a lot of the little, higher lights that were in there. Because if I want this one to be important, I can't just say, okay, this one is important, but also this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And then all of these lights, throughout this, this cloth that is covering her. So I kind of had to make everything subordinate to that little highlight, and I think that was pretty cool. And as soon as I introduced blue, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but I was only working with my earth tones here. So I was working with a lot of raw umber, ochre, and either alizarin or cad red. And the reason was that when I introduced the blue in a little bit, of these spaces, I wanted to feel very, very different. And there's also blue in here, obviously. And the reason I'm not using it here is the same reason I had to sort of measure my values, because if I wanted that to be important, like that to be a tiny little exclamation point, then, you know, I had to make all these also lower, of a lower value, right? And the same thing with blue. If I wanted that coolness of the blue, that blueness, you know, think about it. That's a ultramarine blue, and it's not even pure blue and white and just a little bit of white. That's actually very gray, but it just feels very different because I haven't really used any blue in any of these areas. Like as soon as I introduced blue in this highlight for her hair, it was almost like an invitation to use that blue. And I told myself, oh great, now there's different moments in the painting that have blue in it, and they feel very different from what's happening here. So it's a nice way to introduce a color, to find ways so that that introduction is not super abrupt, like it doesn't come from anywhere, but that you know that you can expect a color like that, even though it feels a little foreign. Because there are moments that are, you know, of blueness throughout, you know, this large mass. But I wanted this face to feel very earthy, and I think the earthiness was going to emphasize a lot of the attitude. So I was like, okay, let's keep that, and the neutrals, I much rather have the neutrals be solved by introduction of raw umber than by canceling out my primaries, which would have been, you know, my yellow, my red, and my blue. So I opted for using a lot of the umber for this one, and I like it. I even like that there's a tiny bit of yellow. I think I solved it at first with yellow in here, but that just feels so nice. It just feels kind of different and weird. So there's moments of, you know, yellow. Obviously, this is like an earthier yellow. Red, which is in her lips, but it's also this cooler, kind of more violet-y, light, you know, red here, and then blue. So there's tiny, tiny little hints of those primaries all throughout the painting that I think are very, very nice. But it's a chunky painting, nice. I think it exhibits also the texture of the paper. You know, the fact we should always let our surface have, you know, it's kind of have a word, you know, in terms of how a painting, of what a painting looks like and how it feels. Because if this doesn't matter, if our surface doesn't matter, then why did we pick it? You know, why did we, out of every single surface that we could paint on that is available to us in this planet, why did we pick that paper? Why did we not pick, you know, a piece of wood or a piece of masonite or whatever, you know? So I think that this painting exhibits a lot of that drag, you know, through that drag of the stroke, through the way the color has seeped in, you know, in these thinner areas, and through the chunkiness of the stroke that is available to us with a bristle brush. These two, well, this is a bristle alternative. This is a rosemary, what's it called? An ivory long flat, and this is how they're trying to replace natural brushes. This one is a natural bristle brush, but these would have been my kind of tougher, you know, bristle brushes, tougher hairs, and these would have been my softer ones, which are all synthetic. And I'm dropping all of them. But that's about it. So it's a nice blend of synthetics and some coarser brushes. Remember, coarser brushes, they deposit, they grab more paint from your surface, they deposit more paint onto, they grab more paint from your palette, they deposit more paint onto your surface. While these, they don't really disturb the surface that much, you know, these softer brushes. So I think it's a nice combination. It has a lot of those tiny little things. I like this. This is probably the most abstract moment in the painting. I really like this. I think this is like a little painting in and of itself, that little V moment. I really dig it. I like it. So anyways, this was our first live. It has all the mishaps of being the first live. So it's actually, because this one's technically the second live video because the first one crashed on us, so we had to restart it. So I think a lot of people, we lost a lot of people in that restart, but that's totally fine. You know, this is just baby steps. This is the beginning of something new that we're trying, so that's totally fine. But I think it went really well. You know, as far as painting and talking at the same time, I'm comfortable with that, and I think I'm very happy with the way the painting ended. You know, it's very close to my sensibility. I'm not painting something that that kind of strays from what I wanted to paint, but more importantly, that would stray from my own sensibility. I think that's many times what happens when we're doing demos. We end up painting something that looks nothing like the paintings we usually make. So this is a painting that I feel very, very comfortable with, and hopefully, you know, this is going to be true for the rest of the week. I'm not going to guarantee it because it's very tough, but we'll give it a shot. But I think it was a good first day. If people are interested, this painting, I can't really, I mean, I could take a photo and yeah, I'm probably going to do that. So I'm probably going to photograph this right now, and we will put this painting up in our webpage in our paintedlives.com like in about half an hour. So if you're interested in this particular painting, and if you're interested in having a chance to win another painting I'm working on, and that one would be totally for free, like this is the one that people are going to win, by donating. This is Fer. I don't know if it's on focus, by the way. But this is the painting that I did today. That would be the painting that's available to the people that donate. And there's another painting I'm working on no, that's not. Esa no es. No, tranqui.
Es esta.
Sí, después la mostramos.
No,
So there's another painting I'm working on that you would be able to win if you buy any of the paintings, and that's a painting that I paint throughout many sessions, or obviously more than one session, just so that it has like a special kind of vibe to it. If you buy a painting, you automatically enter into this giveaway of a monthly painting, and we're gonna do all of that giving away of the painting that people that donate $20 or more automatically get into, and the painting that people that buy paintings. This is super confusing, but it's actually very simple. I'm just drowning here trying to explain, but those two paintings that are going to be available for as a giveaway that we're going to do every month, that this is going to carry over for the whole of next year. So yeah, I probably made a mess of that explanation, but it's far simpler. So if you like this painting, it's going to be up at our webpage in probably about half an hour. I just have to take a photo and edit it and then just put it up. And if you like it, you can buy it. And if you don't, if you can't buy it, don't worry. Like, all of our videos are free. Every single video is free. There's no paywall. So you guys can, look at those videos. And if this is the first time you've seen our videos, there are over 230 videos in our channel that you can, binge on over this Christmas break. So don't do that, by the way. That's crazy. But I wouldn't even do that. I would hate my voice if I did that. But it's there, it's waiting for you whenever you're ready. So, so thank you. And if this wasn't horribly boring, and if I haven't been just insanely annoying by talking over my painting, then then this is an invitation to see you guys tomorrow, where we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do exactly the same thing, and hopefully, with equally as consistent, results as the ones we got today. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll see you guys. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you. You guys are awesome. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.